Greetings, people who really like the amplified circle of fifths. In previous videos, I talked about my innovation, the amplified circle of fifths. And right away you're thinking, good Lord, he's doing this again. I know, it sounds like I repeat. It sounds like I say something more than once. It really does. But what I'm doing is two things. I'm inching forward. I'm inching forward and trying to show you the process I went through, the complete, entire mental process I went through to develop my circle of fifths. And I'm still working on it. I'm 66 and I'm still working on it. And the point is, I'm inching forward, trying to show the process that I went through. It was grueling. And also, the second thing is, when we homeschooled our children, we found that in many cases, it was good to repeat. It was helpful to repeat things, so we would repeat. But it wasn't an exact repetition. What we would do is repeat it slightly differently, just slightly differently, and we would throw in some new material as we repeated the topic. So that's what I do. And then my videos might seem too long and boring, but I'm doing this specifically for a reason, to show you how I used to think. Now let's pick up kind of where we left off. I tried to show how the modes could relate to the circle of fifths, the amplified circle of fifths, all right? Tried to show how these modes could relate to this and be found in this, how we might find them, all right? So I talked about the traditional modes, I call them Glarian, and I talked about the more modern ones, which I gave Byzantine names. I gave these newer modes Byzantine names. These would be the modes built on or from the minor major scale. In the traditional world, you would call this the melodic minor scale, but I don't call it that. You would call this the melodic minor scale. But anyway, so I talked about that. So you should know a little bit about that. Then I said there were two mode perspectives, how you can look at the modes or how you can approach the modes. And I said there's the single scale derived perspective, and then there's the single tonic form, right? I already talked about that, but I want to repeat again, but in a slightly different way. And maybe you'll find this useful. And you'll also notice that my charts change a little bit as I go. I change them to adapt and blend in with the slightly different style. Now let's say we're talking about the single scale derived mode perspective, all right? And that's very simple. You just take a major scale, let's say C major scale, and you can make different modes using only the tones of the C major scale. You can get all these modes, or you could call them the correlated keys. Either way, they're the 7 different modes, or the major scale, and it's 6 correlated scales, all right? And we got that because we talked about the amplified circle of fifths, and we showed how to find your tones, all right? We took your perfect chord, your theoretical perfect chord. We took the tones of these major chords, we mapped them out, and we got a scale shape. We talked about that. We talked about the different scale shapes. And here's another way to get your major scale tones. All right, I already talked about that. So that's, oh, and here with the traditional so-called melodic minor, I call it the C minor major scale. You have your bass scale, all right? And then you have your 6 other modes or correlated keys that you get using only the tones of the C minor scale. All these modes can be made using only the tones of the C minor major scale. And also, on the amplified circle of fifths, you can show that scale. All right? Here's the C minor major, or you would traditionally call this the C melodic minor. And here's your tones. And to get these tones, all right, for this scale, you have your theoretical perfect chord, C, F, and G. Now, they're not lined up. And there's a reason for that, because when you map out your tones, you're using the tones of the C minor chord, not the C major. You see how in this retelling of this same story that I'm mixing it up and showing you some details that heretofore haven't been mentioned. We take the tones of the C minor chord, all right, the G major and the F major. See, the C, F, and G are our theoretical perfect chord, but since we ultimately want a C minor major, then we take the tones of the C minor chord, add those to the tones of the G major chord and the tones of the F major, and we have our mapped out tones, and we have a scale shape. This is one of the scale shapes for this scale. Understand? Because in my scale system, the scale is made of 2 scale phrases. And whenever you have a minor scale in my system, the first scale phrase, all right, will have to have a minor third interval. You see C to E flat, you have it. So that is the scale shape showing the tones mapped out for the C minor major scale, which you probably would call it the C melodic minor. Okay, now we're coming up to speed again. Now the other mode perspective, let me get my little paper here. The other mode perspective I call the single tonic form. Okay, you can look at modes, you can approach modes this way. This is the second way. If you want all your scales to be in the same key, but be a different mode, what you have to do is you have to take, here's the C major scale, all right? Your first mode, the Ionian, it's pronounced Ionian, all right, would be the C major. It's the same thing. In math, you'd call that a reflexive property and a property of identity or whatever. Now, to make the second mode and keeping the same tonic, you want to keep the same tonic. You say, that's my goal. You have to take the B flat major scale, start on the second step of that scale to get this. If you want your third mode, and you want the same tonic, C, you have to take the A flat major scale, start building your scale on the third step. You see, etc., etc. That's how you do that. That's the second perspective. This is the single tonic approach. And that's how you get your 7 modes from your major scale. And you have your correlated key names, the correlated name. All right. Then you have the, you say, well, I want all the modes from the melodic minor, or what I call the C minor major scale, so it's the same thing. You say, I want to keep the same tonic. We're using what we call the perspective of single tonic form. I want to keep a C tonic, so you have to take a C melodic minor scale, or what I would call minor major, and you see that the first mode, all right, your default position, it's the same thing. The tones are the same. The tones of this are exactly the same as this. The tones of this mode are exactly the same as this correlated key, right? Now you say, well, I want the second mode, so you have to take a B flat melodic minor scale or a B flat minor major scale, start on the second tone and build a scale or a mode, whatever, and you're going to get this one here. Same with the rest of them. You're going to need your C melodic minor as your bass, your B flat melodic minor, A melodic minor, G, etc., etc. It's the same thing, only you're working with a different bass scale. You're starting with a different bass, but the process is the same. Now we get to the really beautiful part. In previous videos, I said ordinarily with my perspective or my system, you could call it a system, though it's a work in progress. I said that if the scale is a major, the tonic, let's say C for today, will fall in the major data ring, and I said if the scale is a minor, the C will fall in the minor data ring. All right? So let's see if that's true. Let's see if what I say is true. Let's look at our major scale, C major. And here's your scale shape. I already talked about that. I talked about that at length. All right? And you see it's a major scale, and your C falls in your major data ring. That's nice. That's handy. Down here you have your C minor 3. That would be, you would probably call it a natural minor. That's probably what you call it. And you see your C tonic, all right, falls in your minor data ring. So that works out nicely. You see you have an augmented scale, and your C falls in your major data ring, because in this scale, the first scale phrase is an augmented, and you have a major third interval. You have C to E. So that works out well. Then you see down here you have a C minor 2 augmented, right? And you see that your C, in this case, falls in your diminished data ring, and that works because in your diminished chord, your C to E flat is a minor third. So that works fine. Then you have a C minor scale, and you see that your C falls in your minor data ring. All right, and here's your major minor. You'd probably call this a dominant scale. You see that your C falls in the major data ring. Here's your C minor 2 scale, and that's because this scale is made with 2 minor 2 scale phrases. That's the system I invented. It's beautiful and I love it. And you see that your C falls in your minor data ring. So that's nice. That works out nice. So for your major scales, they work nicely with the amplified circle of fifths when you're mapping out modes all with the same tonic. Now you say, let's move to the modes built on the, what I call the minor major scale, or what you might call the melodic minor scale. So we start with our C minor major, our bass scale, our mode, either way. And you see, el problemo, the C tonic falls in the major data ring. And you say, why? Well, I'll tell you why. Because first of all, it is a minor major scale. But if you really need that C to fall in that minor data ring, it's very simple. All you do, see this scale shape here in the pink? All you do is you use another scale shape, and right there is your C. Right there it is in your minor data ring. So it'll always work out. And this is why I mentioned in previous videos that there's 2 or 3 or more scale shapes, because sometimes you need them when you're teaching little children. You need variety. So I'm showing you this. That C tonic is in the minor data ring using this scale shape here. You see, it's the same scale shape actually, all right? But all I did was I moved it in. I slid it in one data ring. I just slid in one data ring, and it's basically the same shape. It just looks a little crunched up down here, okay? A little crunched up, right? So we go back to our chart, and we see here for the C minor augmented scale, your C's in the minor data ring where it belongs. You see here for the C augmented scale, the C's in the outer major data ring, which works. That works perfectly. So we get past that obstacle, all right? Then we have the remaining scales built on or from the minor major, or you would call it melodic minor. C minor 2 minor. Now you have another problem here. Say there's another problem. The C's in the major data ring, I don't like it. I want to teach my young students. I don't want to be a hypocrite. So all you do is you switch to a different scale shape, and there's your C in your minor data ring. You just use a different scale shape, and then it explains it clearly. It works out beautifully. All right. Now getting back here, we have a C diminished augmented, and your C's in your minor data ring. Here you have your augmented minor. The C's out here where it belongs. And then finally we have the C major minor 2 scale, and the C's in the major data ring where it belongs. So within reason, you can easily put your tonics, you can use scale shapes such that your tonic falls in the data ring where it belongs, and the data ring where you want it to sit in. the data ring that you choose. Now, one last thing quickly is you can say, how can I quickly and easily look at that amplified circle of fifths with a scale shape drawn on it, all right, with a scale shape mapped out? How can I tell if the scale is a minor? Well, there's two indicators. I call them minor scale indicators. One is the tonic, all right, resides in the minor or diminished data ring. See, I showed you that. I showed you here examples how the tonic will reside in the minor or diminished data ring. Let me see if I have one. Well, anyway, I can't find that paper, but the tonic will reside, all right, in the minor or diminished data ring, and then you know you have a minor scale or a diminished scale. Minor and diminished are good because in that scale, the interval from your tonic to your third is a minor. Now, there's another indicator, all right, the tonic minor third symbol, all right, the combination, all right, the coupling. The tonic minor third coupling or picture or image, all right, is visible in the scale shape. Well, let's look at an example here. Let's say the C minor 2 minor scale. You see the C, E flat relationship is right there within the scale shape. It's right there. You can see it clearly. And see, that's what you would look for in your scale shape. Here's another scale. Okay, here's the C minor 2 minor with this scale shape. And you have your C, E flat. Right, you have it there. You have it here in your C minor major scale. That's our base scale. You have it there. So those are the two minor scale indicators. Right? The tonic itself will fall in the minor diminished data ring, or you'll see that combination, that pairing. All right, you'll see that in the scale shape, within the scale shape. And that's it for today. I know it went a little bit long. I know we repeated, but we repeated our data, our material slightly differently, and we threw in some new stuff, little helpful hints, so that in your mind you can not only follow the way my mind went through this process over the many, many years, but it might also help you to better understand this thing here, because the more I talk about it and the more I personally use it here at home, the more I like it a lot. So thanks for being remarkably patient, and maybe we'll see you again in the future. Good night.